trauma and loss. But I see change, and yes, I've been lucky over the years to see some real embrace. And but you're right, you make a really relevant point. Probably the smaller organisations I see and work with, it's quicker. There's less
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
There can be that real, yes, let's do that. I saw it at the conference I delivered in the children's home, and they had a care leaver, I understand, really struggling with housing. And so they invested some of the money from the children's home revenue and bought a house.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's not going to happen in the council overnight, is it? It would
Mm,
have to go
mm.
through chains and chains of funding agreement and equity. But
And
I
risk
guess,
assessment and all that sort of stuff, wouldn't it?
yeah,
You'd have grandchildren by the time that came through.
I know. But if you think about it, that corporate parenting, if I could, really lucky trust funds were around. So I saved in she doesn't realise she's lucky. She thinks she might listen to this. She's hopefully studying social work, so she might listen. But I really squirreled, despite being a single mum, and she's enough for a deposit for a house at 19 if she wanted.
Yeah, wow.
But I suspect there'll be a fancier car before that. So it's her money. But the relevance wasn't for me to show off because I surprised myself with it. And I think the trust funds did help.
Yeah.
The relevance was what that children's home did for that young person,
Mm,
that real co-parenting, we probably all would, wouldn't we? If we,
yeah.
I would like it socially leveled for young people who've left care. I'd like them to have there was there was a big festival at the weekend, and one of the local councils, they arranged for free tickets for children care. And I love things like that.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we level it out?
Absolutely. The thing for me, one of the biggest things for me is that when they're starting to get to that to 16, 18, and then the pressure is is to social workers to have the conversation around, so are you moving to independence? So are you moving? It's like these kids are emotionally sometimes 10, 11. Would you be placing your 10, 11-year-old in a flat, in the YMCA, in someone? Why are you having this conversation? We know that childhood now, we know the brain doesn't fully develop until people are 24, 25. Why are we having conversations 10 years early about are you going to live it independently? You would not do that even with a typically developing child, you wouldn't be having a conversation, would you, at 16 around, so have you decided where you're going to live? What you got? Like, my son couldn't leave his room at 16, never mind do anything else. Do you know what I mean? It's that those things are just not, yeah, there is no equitability in that, is there at all?
No, and they're now looking into the early deaths of children in care, which long overdue because child safeguarding practice reviews, they have year in, year out been care experience. Young people and the inequalities, more likely to be homeless, the a range of inequities and challenges. And yet for years we've placed them in deprived areas where they're vulnerable, where they could be targeted for abuse, without family privilege, with limited social privilege. So I hope we see change. I think it's great the staying put, and I really like the staying close that some of the councils are early piloting, where some of the young people are having a chance to have really keep in contact with services, go out on trips, regularly meet up for food. And we've got to replicate the privilege of family for the children
Yeah.
who don't have that family privilege. Um,
And there are some
if they
great
want it.
practices out there, aren't there?
Mm.
There's some great foster carers who have the children or young people and staying put, or even just if that doesn't work, say they're not going anywhere, they're staying with us, they're part of our family, and whether we remain a foster carer or not, these kids aren't going anywhere, and there are some of the councils around here where they do test flats. So the kids think, oh, I want a flat, and they'll do a test for a week, and then they're like, oh no, I don't want it. And then so there are some really great practices, I think, that go on, but it's the funding isn't there, is it? I don't think it's the lack of will. I think
Um,
often it's the lack of
if
resources.
housing's a
Yeah.
big issue. Lots of issues. Sorry, my little dog came in. If you wondered where my eyes went, but she seems happy now. I know. Do you know I could talk to you all day? It's really. I feel like it's flawed because I think at the heart of what we're talking about, isn't it? It's trying to do the best we can, have the best values and ethics, and I guess we'll use the experience to share the most knowledge we have in
Mm.
terms of connection, relationships, to build capacity in those who need it. And as
And
you say,
how,
the system,
yeah,
the carers, everybody.
absolutely. And how does it differ to when you're traveling to Malta or Canada or South Africa or America? Are they facing the same kind of challenges that we face? What is it that you take from them? I'm guess.
Oh, do you know, I'd absolutely love global work. America and South Africa on the wish list. So I like that. Maybe I can take that as a sign. Global work, so much, just so much. I've learned so much from Malta, tiny island. I think I've been there 9, 10 times. I usually present at the International Mental Health Conference in the spring. So plug for there because it's one of the best conferences I go to. And obviously, not just because I genuinely present, but what I've learned is just so much because, for example, the children's homes currently in Malta, they've bravely extended the age. In the UK, with Ofsted, the 18, you should leave. If you can have a little bit of grace, if you contact Ofsted and say, look, there's a hiccup, we'll need a couple of extra days, and you can say on balance, they've lived here 8 years, so they're not going to change at their 18th birthday and suddenly cause a risk. But you can't have an adult stay beyond. And in Malta, they've piloted it and they've had no hiccups, children staying beyond 18.
Well, that's
So
fantastic.
it is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you're just always learning because I think developmentally, as you say, they're not quite 18. So sometimes some changes are learning some brave policies and practice from other places. And I think it's having that mindset. It's wonderful to be invited to another country for us to share, but I always go with a mindset that I'll probably learn as
Yeah.
much, if not more, than I'll gain. Yeah, there's always some significant learning. There always is. And because I suspect the difficulties, whether it's, as you say, it used to be child protection. I know I have a master's in child protection studies, and then they changed the term. Sorry about dog. I hope the dog can be edited out. But I guess we face in different countries safeguarding, displacement, children moving around care systems. I believe Australia's got the same issues as ourselves
Mm.
in terms of the scarcity of places for children. And I just think we learn and that helps us develop and we take the best from other countries and we return and we
Mm.
try to share ideas and the interest if I weave things in training from other country, it always peaks for people because we are so much bigger than a small island of the UK, aren't we? We
Yeah.
there is so much more we can learn and evolve and just try to improve services. So I am excited for Canada. We've come a bit full circle, haven't we?
Yeah. So that my next question is how did you get into this? How did you end up where you are? What?
Well, I always thank Paul, but I think he might be finding it cheesy now. But I went to London as a nanny at 18 after as a nursery nurse. And then I think I was about 19 and I worked in a nursery in a mental health unit, but it was closed. And ironically, it was the one Spike Milligan was in and one of the Cray twins.
Oh,
Spike's
right.
pictures were on the wall. I don't think one of the Crays left any pictures, but Spike did. But in the period of closing, because it was like an old asylum, I'd just been offered this agency job, worked in the nursery, and it was closing. They said you can go to a children's inpatient unit in London. And I did. Didn't know I was a nursery nurse. I didn't really know much about it, but I went as a healthcare assistant. Absolutely loved it. I loved the learning opportunities. The young people was incredible. And my manager was so caring, Paul. And I just wanted to do more. I
Mm.
don't think the nursing was for me because I'm not squeamish, but I don't know that I could do the needly type things to people. trained in social work. And then probably that 5 years of working before the degree, I think you then perhaps I got into management quite quickly and managing the mental health service for children in care. And that felt just right because I remained passionate about mental health services. And then during university, I worked in children's homes in Sunderland and still have some contact with young people. Not, you've always got to follow the
Yeah.
channels, but they would years later get in touch, and it was just wonderful to hear young people were doing okay. Which I'll come back to that thread because that's one of the. I made a film with young people who grew up in care. Social Work England funded it, which I'm so passionate about. The mental health service I managed for 10 years until the public sector cuts. I always learn going as a lecturer helped me understand it. At the time we bailed out bankers, some of the money came from public sector. So Quality Protects, I don't know if you remember that, and Choice
Yeah, right,
Protects.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Victoria Climbier that came out of it was
yeah,
that one. Yeah,
improved quality. The
yeah.
money led to better provision, but then the cuts after, I think, 10, 11 years, even though it won 3 national awards, the services were cut. So that started presenting nationally then. I think that was 2002 onwards. So it's nearly 25 years. I was very young when I started social work. And then the university asked me to apply for a role. I had done a couple of conferences with them, presented a couple of keynotes. Then I lectured for a few years, started some publishing and more presenting. And probably I was doing a PhD with uni, and probably personal circumstances then led me to take my redundancy and a few other roles, but probably that's the bulk was the
Yeah.
lecture and the children's mental health. I've loved things since then. I worked as a head of practice and quality in a council, and director in IFA, and then more recently, more independent, a mixture. So I've had some great opportunities. But the last few years, I'd like to belong, maybe a swan song where I belong. So I think you could create more as a team. We shall see. I would like to do another 10 years. 54. So I was quite young when I started out. 30 years of social work nearly. Is it this year or next year? It's 30 years, which apparently we only manage 8 years. So you and I, Philippa,
When I listen to your thing, I was a nanny in London at
were
18.
you? No
Yeah,
way.
literally, yeah. And
Isn't
I
that?
also went to work in a psychiatric hospital in just in North London.
Did you? We've lived
Yeah,
parallel lives. We'll have to
I
keep in
know.
touch.
Honestly, yeah, I went to a place it was called Huntercombe at the time.
I've
No,
heard of it.
Huntercombe is where I worked later on. It was called Harperbury Hospital in
I was
Radlett.
at Horton Hospital.
Yeah. So yeah, so quite similar, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I went to university in Hertfordshire, so I went to Hertfordshire University to do my social work. So yeah, quite a similar. But you've got into management, and I'm a very poor manager, Steph. I'm very
Well,
poor.
I think, do you know, I think it's whether you make a difference.
Yeah,
I
I don't
I've
mind
used
mentoring. I think there's a difference
mm,
between mentoring and managing. The bureaucracy, I'm not very good with.
I can understand that. I can understand that. And I think they're different times. I probably got nostalgic for the 10 years that I managed a team.
That's good though. So
But I think
how do you think social work's changed over our time? How do you think social work's changed?
I, I try to be really balanced. I think there's some quality improvements. I do think there is. There has to be. I think there's some councils and settings where it is encouraged to be therapeutic and creative. I do think there's improvements. Oh gosh, that was such a good question. And I actually think that there's quality and opportunity for training's increased. You had to be really specialist to get opportunities. I've been lucky that some of the places I've worked have funded lots of study. I think it's about 15 years part-time. The uni made me always put the letters after my name. But I think there's a bit more equity. I think some really interesting training there's more equity. Lots of people get the opportunity to do pace training that we both did. And that's great, isn't it? Standardized quality, like the restorative practice. So where I think it was limited, I remember having to do a competitive essay when I worked in one organization to access postgrad training. And I was so thrilled by essay passed and I was allowed. And I guess they probably had to with limited funds, but I think I get a sense that there's a good training and I think supervision's improved in some settings. But I am lucky. I've had great supervisors in the past and access some good training and some opportunities to really drive services. So yeah, 30 years has not been like
Mm.
it's
Yeah. I suppose I wonder if social work has changed in the way that, certainly in the core of it, that there's a lot more around case managing
oh
rather than the
yeah.
doing. I
Yes,
remember
yeah.
going into houses, cleaning the houses, getting the skip delivered, emptying it all out, and redoing it, taking kids out for the day,
Mm,
going in and doing breakfast with some, to go alongside parents who maybe had low mood or depression and couldn't get that up in the morning or couldn't get established in a routine. I remember going into houses and just doing it with them. I think lots of social workers might like to do that now, but they are so limited by the unbelievable amount of paperwork and bureaucracy that goes with it. I don't think the caseloads changed. I still had a very high caseload, but I don't feel that I had the amount of paperwork, the amount of bureaucracy that social workers have to do nowadays. I could literally go and cook someone's dinner for them and collect the kids from school with them. And I think that I don't know, certainly, but that's what I feel is that hands-on, literally, the reason social work was invented is almost
yeah.
gone in some ways.
You make me smile again because it reminds me of favourite. I used to love making a roast dinner when I worked at a children's home
Yeah,
because it's many things, not just cooking a meal, isn't it? You're
absolutely.
modeling, connecting. Do you know though, you're ahead of me because I don't recall cooking with a family and it would have been lovely. So you sound like if I'd needed a social worker, I think I'd have wanted you.
Maybe not, but yeah, I had a great manager and when I started, I had a really good manager named Richard, and I had three very experienced. Two were a social worker and one was a support worker, and they were so super experienced and so super kind that actually they let me. Again, nowadays, I think you're thrown in at the deep end and you just have to get on with it. I thought I was in at the deep end when I started, but I literally wasn't. Do you know, they allowed me that time to flourish and to learn and to be, and were very, very generous with their knowledge of giving to me. So I think that enabled me to be along. I guess it's that where we started about being alongside a family. That didn't mean that for some children we still didn't have to make hard decisions, and they might not have removed stayed at home. But I think I had more, as a social worker, I had way more scope to be with the family and really know them,
Yeah.
you know?
Do you know, you've given me such a lovely thought that we talked before I went on air of who this was for. And do you know, the great privilege I said that I made a film with some care experienced adults I'd known over the years and I'm still in contact with, which is wonderful to know they're doing well. And albeit life can have its challenges if you've got a hard start, it's just it is so good to know they're okay. If anybody was listening to me or yourself who we touched their lives in any way, I think I'd probably want to say that I still think about them and that they meant an awful lot and still do because their stories and the opportunities to be part of their lives were some really powerfully important good parts of my 30 years.
Absolutely. I can still remember the names of all, certainly in those. I worked in child protection for 2.5 years, and I can still remember the names of all the children that yeah, because I was really learning that those families taught me a lot. They taught, and I am who I am now because I worked with those families, and it wasn't always easy. And like I say, some children did have to end up being living with foster families or,
Yeah.
extended family members because for whatever reason, their family of origin were finding it tricky to care for them. But there was a grace in that, I think, that they hopefully gave me the information and the experience that helped going forward, and I remember them all. It's more
Mm.
tricky when I go into the hospital and therapy because the turnaround and the impact is
Yeah.
less. But
Yeah, you're
certainly
right.
those 2.5 years for sure.
Do you know there's a real humility there, Philippa? Because that we've gained, but I hope if any of it was wounding for the because we do the absolute best we can. Children are moved when it's not right, and but I hope if it was wounding that there things are better now
Yeah.
for anyone we've been involved with,
I
and I
suppose,
hope,
yeah. I suppose I hope that people felt valued, even if I
yeah,
made a decision that they didn't want me to make, or we had to do something that I hope, and even now that the families I work with, that they know that I value them as people, even if I don't, even now. There are
yeah,
families, and that I might say, actually, I think that's a little bit tricky for your child. You might need to do something a little bit. You still might have to have those conversations, or supervisees now, or practitioners. I think there's a value in a relationship, isn't there? Whatever that relationship is, and we should always hold that at the center of what we're doing.
yeah, definitely, definitely. There's absolute value that whatever I hope their experience was as humanizing as possible in
Yeah,
circumstances that are really dehumanizing, aren't they? Sometimes
absolutely.
courts, services, poverty, mental health, domestic abuse, all of those things. We can just hope that what we try to be alongside them is as human as possible.
Absolutely. I think we have systems that are true, even for adopters or foster care, you're assessed all the way through to say, are you going to be good enough? And then you have the most challenging of children because of their early experiences. And then you're judged because you're not parenting them in the way that, and
Mm.
how would anybody know how to parent that level of trauma? I've been doing it 30 years and I still don't know how to do it. But I'm more confident in thinking, let's give this a go.
Yeah,
Maybe let's try
yeah,
this, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. But when you've been assessed through the way, or birth families who are reunified with their children, how scary must that be? Because you've then still got authorities involved, haven't you? And what happens if you make a mistake? Are they going to take them away again? And whilst we need to protect children, we also need to know and acknowledge how hard it is for the adults around them at times, I think.
definitely. I know. I think since I've become a parent, my compassion's grown. You know,
Yeah.
because I naively thought I'd be amazing parent. Is that
Me
terrible?
too.
You
I
know,
was terrible.
my children probably do need to listen to this just to put me in my place. I hope I've been as good as I could be, but it's hard, isn't it? It is hard.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's tiring. It's hard. You think about them all the time, and you weighing things up, and you just trying to do your best. And sometimes the structures in society. When I lectured, that was really helpful for me. That we're very individualistic in society. We blame parents. We blame, and actually sometimes the structures. If you're a parent where your child has additional needs, we all know that schools don't, with all the best will in the world, don't always have the capacity for the reasonable
Yeah.
adjustments. Um, if you, it's just a lot, isn't it? The structures, whether it's childcare, education, health, they're they're not always
Just
set
your
up on the
public
best way.
transport. How do you
Yeah,
get somewhere? I live
I
in quite a
know.
rural place. If you don't have a car, you've had it really. You're not going
Mm.
anywhere. Only once a day and you can't get back. You know, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right. The structures and all, adding housing instability and different things like that. Really hard, isn't it?
yeah,
We do
yeah.
have to do that, walk a mile in their shoes. Really try to be deeply empathic and care. And oh, do you know, I found this so energizing. Because I was tired. It's hot in Durham at the moment. I
Yeah.
think you were saying it's hot.
I
And
just want
now,
to say that when this goes out, we are at the moment, this is the hottest day of the year at the end of May. I know we're not going out until probably the end of June, but this is the hottest day of the year.
when it's probably raining then, and they think, what are they
Yeah.
talking about? These two middle-aged women are probably just overheating themselves.
Yeah. Just having a hot flush right now. Add
But
that into this heat wave, and it's not very good at all.
for, yeah, I was driving and thinking, should I, why am I always volunteering for things? But I was so delighted when you asked, because it's just, I've totally loved talking, but it's just great to still have that chance to enthuse and feel the
Yeah,
energy about the trying to make a difference. And I feel like
absolutely.
you've
And
got that too. So it's been real joy
yeah,
talking
and
to you.
your experience is just super amazing. So maybe when you've been to Canada, you can come back on again and tell us
Oh, I'd
all
love
about
that.
Canada. That would be,
Oh, that was such a
um,
treat.
yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic. So thank you so much for your time. And we'll put links on to websites or whatever at the end of the podcast if people want to click on or find out about any of the things that you've talked about or any of the people you've talked about, then they can click onto that. So thank you so much, Steph, for
Oh,
your
I've
time.
loved it. Thank you.